Hey, this is Catholic Dab, episode number 75. I wanted to talk to you about communism versus fascism. What are some of the differences between the two? And anyway, we have to realize that both are authoritarian regimes, right? Both are strong-arm government, autocracy, autocratic dictate, force of the state, and so on and so forth. None of them are liberty. None of them are freedom. None, and so I'm kind of a freedom and liberty guy. So I'm not an advocate of communism or fascism, but both proliferated and did very well last century in terms of the maintenance of power, and they also did very well in body count. They were responsible for literally hundreds of millions of people being killed at the hands of the state last century, and so I think it's actually worthwhile to actually have a conversation about what is communism and what is fascism. And so communism typically is the far left, the autocratic far left, the dictatorial force of the state on the far left. And then the fascism, in the words of Mussolini, is this the fusion of state and corporate powers, and that's the autocratic dictate on the right. So if you want to talk about which ones, so communism, it essentially seizes all private property, and it doesn't allow any of its citizens to have any private property. It's centralized in the hands of the state, and the state, through their central planning techniques, actually are the great allocators of property to people within the body populace. And the one thing that it does do, one of the big differences, is it removes all profit motives from the people. And therefore, that's why people in communist regimes tend to have food shortages, short supplies of necessities of life, long waiting lines, and really the people that are the producers of wealth get strangled in communism. Fascism, it's kind of the opposite, where the state, there's a fusion of state and corporate powers, but it keeps the wealth not all in the hands of the people, but primarily in the hands of the people, and it's run through the autocratic dictate of the state about who gets to keep the money, who can't keep the money. And so in some ways, fascism in terms of economic models is superior to communism. Fascism, there's still people getting wealthy under fascism, and in fact, that's under communism too. There's people getting super wealthy. I mean, look at all the neoconservatives in this country, the Henry Paulsons, Hank Paulsons of the world, the George Soroses, all ex-commies that had lots and lots of money that they took out of the state when the wall fell in Russia, right? And so, but nonetheless, fascism, it creates a strong industrial base, and it's far better able to compete in terms of economic prosperity than communism. Now, which is worse or which is better depends on what metric you use to measure which is worse and which is better. If the metric you use is which is more palatable at a cocktail party, communism by far wins this one, because communists at a cocktail party that's kind of like the Katharine Hepburns of Long Island. It's like you ever see that movie Spruce Goose with Howard Hughes, and they're at the Hepburn's house, his girlfriend's house on Long Island, and Howard's talking about his business ventures, and Katharine Hepburn's mom says, "Howard, in this family we're all socialists. We don't talk about money." And he says, "That's because you've always had it, right?" And so, in terms of cocktail parties, the socialists and the communists, it's far more palatable, because they always state like their objective is to hurt the downtrodden and the poor and the weak, and redistribute income from the wealthy down to the weak and the downtrodden. And that's a very palatable. It's kind of intellectually easy position to take. It's not like you're saying that you're hurting anybody, or like it's always help, 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 help. And the communists always sound like it's the easiest position to take. And on any day of the week, in almost any venue. And I would say, unless of course the cocktail parties with people that have lived under communism, because then, like, let's say you had a bunch of Cubans that you were at the cocktail party with, you're going to get punched in the face for supporting communist ideas, because they know what it brings, right? Or Eastern Europe, the Lithuanians, the Latvians, Slovakians, the Czechs. They know what it is, and they would never, ever, ever want communism in their country. Like fascism at a cocktail party, it's kind of, fascists tend to have a racial superiority model. They tend to state that certain people are going to be excluded from the economic prosperity of the state. In terms of the fascist model of Russia, of Hitler, he was excluding the Jews, the Gypsies, and some really religious Roman Catholics. So And so that's a hard, palatable pill to use at a cocktail party. But yeah, so in terms of cocktail parties, communism is a much easier avenue to take. In terms of body count, which is worse, communists kill a heck of a lot more people. What is Stalin? About 50 million. In his reign of terror back in the 30s, he was killing like 45,000 people per month. Wait, that's not right. It was more than that even. Maybe it was even per week. Just in the death camps through firing squads and so on and so forth. Anybody that kind of objected to his rule, he would kill them. The strong right, the hard right, the fascists of the world, they're not nearly as good as piling a body count. I mean, Hitler in his death camps, maybe 12 million. They had 5 to 6 million Jews who were killed in the death camps, and probably 6 million political dissidents, mostly Roman Catholics, religious Roman Catholics that weren't willing to abide by National Socialism. And so, in terms of body count, communism is far worse. In terms of cocktail parties, communism is much better. What else? In terms of industrial might, communism is worse there too, right? Because it removes all profit motives, and so therefore the industrial base gets hollowed out, and then you have to force people to work at the point of a bayonet or the point of a muzzle. The fascists, they do maintain some of their economic prosperity. If you think about it, communists, they reduce their entire population to slavery, right? They essentially say nobody's allowed to own anything, and you're working for the state, period. I mean, that's the same thing as just a big plantation, except that the state is the slave master, right? And so the communists reduce everybody to slaves. The fascists reduce some people to slaves, like the Jews and the Gypsies and the political dissidents, but everybody else wasn't a slave to the state of fascism. I mean, they did have to serve the state somewhat. But yeah, so in terms of absolute economic oppression and slavery, communism wins the chip on that one. And so anyway, those are just some differences in terms of the far left and the far right. I'm neither. I'm a kind of a Roman Catholic religious libertarian. I believe in the principle of subsidiarity. The state should do less, not more, and we need chains on the legislators and chains on the state in terms of our legal system, so they don't descend into autocracy and authoritarianism and the hard right or the hard left. Either one. Don't like them either, but nonetheless, this is Catholic Dad making you think about it. What is communism? What is fascism? These are things people should think about, and if you're a good person, you probably shouldn't be into either. So anyway, this is Catholic Dad signing off. Please like or subscribe, get the Mass, and pray the Daily Rosary. Thank you.